everyone. Welcome to this week's edition, a very special edition, I might add, of a Giant TV Sideline to Sideline. I'm Chuck LaFleur, along with a good Canadian guy, Ryan Fleming.
A good Canadian guy, that's right. Anywhere else in the world, you know, I'm just average, but here in Canada,
you're a good Canadian guy.
Good.
I like that.
Brian, our special guest, because Canada Day, of course, the show coming out just after Canada Day, we thought we'd talk about all things Canadian in sports, and another great Canadian guy joining us.
One of the best. And thank you, Brian, so much for taking the time out of your busy afternoon. I know this is a prime sleeping time for you usually.
It is.
So.
It is, man. But as soon as you said we're talking Canadian sports and what happened recently in the country, then yeah, I want to be a part of this.
Amazing.
Brian Salmon from our Giant FM morning show, veteran broadcaster and a long time sports fan. Guys, we're going to talk about things that are happening or have happened recently in Canadian sports since this is Canada Day week. And Ryan, nothing bigger in the last maybe several years than the Toronto Raptors.
You know, you say several years, I think even longer than that to see, this is, and when people say Canada's team, it is legit. This is Canada's team. They are the only basketball team in Canada. So we had the entire country behind us, and then a great majority of the states too. We were that feel-good story south of the border. So yeah, I'd argue it's maybe the biggest thing since the Summit Series?
Yeah, you know what? I think a lot of people in the States had enough of Golden State maybe winning the NBA championship as often as they had. So, yeah, definitely. I don't think there's ever been anything quite like this. Maybe since 1967, but that was long before social media, the internet, and that sort of thing. When the Leafs won the Cup, Canadians, Montreal Canadiens, Toronto Blue Jays was huge, but maybe not to this extent. Brian, and I've known generally you hadn't in past years been necessarily an NBA fan, but did you jump on board that Raptor bandwagon?
How could you not jump on board that? How could you not? I didn't know a lot of the players' names for the longest time, and then all of a sudden, just rhyming off the top of my head, Pascal Siakam, right? Let me see, Marc Gasol, these guys, and of course Kawhi Leonard, and everybody talking about him. And you were right, Ryan, about the whole country just galvanized, right, for that parade. And I don't think there's been anything as big ever in the country.
Now, hopefully, Kawhi Leonard re-signs with the Toronto Raptors. Been a lot of talk of that recently, up to the recording of this show at least. Wouldn't that be something?
And we're seeing him on a lot of Toronto venues and events. We've seen him at the Jays game a few weeks ago, you know, making his way down there. Mind you, they were playing Anaheim at the time, too. So, you know, there's that LA connection that they always talk about with Kawhi. But like I said, how could you not want to play for somewhere where the entire country is backing you?
Absolutely. And judging from his speech on the stage, I don't know, he was just so relaxed and having a great time. And the other guys, they seem to act like we already know what's going to happen, don't they?
Right.
They're laughing and high-fiving him. So you'd have to think that it looks like he probably will sign.
You know, Brian, Ryan brought up a good point before we started recording this episode of Sideline to Sideline regarding the parade in Toronto. And, Ryan, you were talking about if the Leafs were ever to win.
Well, yeah, so my whole question is, I'll ask to both of you, do you think that if the Leafs were to win the Stanley Cup, would they have the same kind of turnout that the Raptors did? Because they're one of 7 Canadian teams in the NHL, whereas, you know, like we said with the Raptors, they're the only one.
Yeah, you know what? I think it will be as big. I really do. It's been, since 67 since they last won the Cup. Everybody says Toronto is a hockey town, right? Right now it's basketball. And when the Blue Jays won the World Series, it was baseball. But I'm telling you, when those Leafs win the Cup, and it's not too far away, about another 2 or 3 years, you're going to see a big celebration going on.
You know, I tend to think, guys, too, you get a lot of people flying from coast to coast into Toronto for a parade like that. So the numbers may be fairly close to the estimated 1.5 to 2 million they had.
I could see some people flying from parts of like other countries around the world that have moved recently. You know,
and that's one thing that we did talk about, especially when it comes to the Leafs.
Yeah.
Anywhere you go, basically, especially maybe in the Western Hemisphere, you're going to see someone sporting something Maple Leafs.
That's
it doesn't
right.
matter where you are. Go to Cuba, you're going to see a lot of Cubans there wearing Toronto Maple Leaf regalia. But it's not the same really with the Montreal Canadiens, which is probably the next biggest Canadian team as far as fandom goes.
Right. Well, Montreal Canadian fans are spoiled, right? I mean, only until a couple of years ago they've been sort of, just edging into the playoffs or making outside. But they've won so many cups.
And they'll let you know that at every
Yes,
opportunity.
they will.
won't they?
Yes, they will.
Guys, we want to switch gears from the Raptors
Sure.
and the Maple Leafs to something else that's been in the news recently, since this is our Canada Day, Canada Week show of episode of Sideline to Sideline. The possibility of the Montreal Expos returning, well, not so much the Montreal Expos, but the Tampa Bay Rays relocating for at least half a season in Montreal.
I can't believe that not too long ago this was a World Series team, and now they're talking about playing a few games, or actually more than a few games in Montreal. Good news for Montreal fans, but how would you feel if you were in Florida right now?
Like right now, I would feel that this is a transition. It almost feels like a transition. Right. Like they're thinking, we will get those fans, because Montreal. I mean, look at the fan support they had in 90. Was it 94 when they left?
94, best record in baseball.
Exactly,
until
that was the strike, right?
The strike here.
Exactly, that was their year. But I think they're thinking that they could maybe replicate that and get that fandom back there. And what a better way than just hey, we'll give you a few of these every once in a while and see how they go.
I think everything is predicated. Obviously, that's part of the possible arrangement is that they'd have to have a new stadium in Montreal that may go not really conducive. I love going there for many games over the years, but they'd have to have a new stadium. And would you any of you switch allegiances then? From I'm assuming you're both Blue Jay fans.
Absolutely not. I am.
What's wrong with you?
I am a Cubs fan, and secondly, a White Sox fan. So.
All right, I became a Blue Jays fan when they started out in 1977. So that first game against the Chicago White Sox, who will ever forget that in the snow? Who will ever?
Yeah.
You know what, Chuck? I used to really enjoy the what were they? The Pearson Cup games between the Blue Jays.
Backups. We played the Blue Jays backups.
That's right. They used to play some really good ball back then, but the two teams played hard for that Pearson Cup.
Well, maybe that'll be revitalized again.
Who knows?
The interleague challenge.
Yeah, well, you know what the good thing
that's
is, too,
right.
If you're going to become the new Montreal Rays or whatever they could call them fan, they play in the same division as the Yankees, the Red Sox, and the Toronto Blue Jays. So they'd be in Toronto, right in our backyard, a lot.
Now, here's the thing. If they were to get another team in Montreal, would it automatically be the Expos again? I think it should.
Right. I think it would be one of those things that it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I think I'd have to.
Yeah. Well, it was like the Jets. When it wasn't even the Jets came back, it was who was it that came?
Atlanta Thrashers.
Yeah, right.
Right.
It just makes sense.
Winnipeg Thrashers just didn't do it.
No.
Our Canada Day week edition of Sideline to Sideline Canadian Football League we have to touch on too. Now, I know, Brian, you're a huge fan, Ticats fan, but we won't hold that against you. Thanks for joining us on the show. But Ryan Fleming, we're trying to indoctrinate him slowly but surely to the Canadian game.
Listen, I was a big fan of CFL back in the day, like Doug Flutie days. Even I was a big Matt Dunnigan fan.
Yeah, sure.
Watching him play. But that was also the era where we had the American teams in the league as well.
That's right.
For Vegas, he had that pass for 700 yards in the one game.
Oh.
It's just, to me, the game is just every year it's gotten harder for me to keep following it. I always usually watch it pretty religiously until NFL starts.
Right.
And then once NFL starts, it's all about the Vikings, baby.
You see, I love the NFL. I love the NFL, the Cowboys, the Bills, or whatever. But I also watch the CFL, too, because it's a different game.
What do you like about it most?
About the CFL? I love the wide field, and I just love the fact that it just keeps going. The offense just keeps going, and I do like the 3 downs. I do love that. One thing I didn't like, though, was that first game for the Toronto Argonauts, losing 64-14 to the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Being a Ticats fan, I was going, all right, okay, enough is enough.
Wasn't that on Ricky Ray Appreciation Day?
Exactly.
Right?
The very first game of the season, you'd think they'd come out of the tunnel, fired up the Argos, and they look like they just entered training camp.
What a great time to pick a day to honor Ricky Ray.
I know. And
Ray.
here your first game, and you're trying to tell Toronto fans, hey, look, we're back, and now we've got a great brand of football, and you just lay an egg like that.
Guys, any other Canadian sports we want to touch on here?
There's something that I wanted to talk about, the Canadian women's soccer team.
Yeah.
So what happened? What happened there? Of course, the main question is why didn't Christine Sinclair take that penalty shot?
Big question.
Is the big for you, because you're the big football guy here.
Yep.
Is it the manager? Like having that new manager, was that a big part of it? Or
I
was
think-
it just everyone else caught up to them?
I think it had a huge part of it. Plus, I think this is Christine's last World Cup, so maybe they thought, okay, we don't want to put a 30-something in there. We'll get someone a bit younger, but younger is inexperienced, and excuse me, and the penalty was saved.
You know what? While we have Brian from our China FM morning show, of course, guesting with us, Ryan, you have a very pertinent question. Not so much to do maybe with Canadian sports, but it's a beautiful game.
So I hear you're like me, you're a big Wayne Rooney fan.
Oh yeah, huge Rooney fan. Yeah.
Big Man U fan.
Oh, hang on a minute. Wayne Rooney played. All right, Wayne Rooney played for Manchester United, and I rarely say that name out loud, being a Manchester City fan.
Okay. My question to you would be, as a big football fan,
Yeah.
what is the difference between, you know, of course, there's so many different leagues when it comes to football.
Right,
over there.
right.
But is there a big difference between there and what we see in Canada and
So-
in the States with the MLS?
Okay, so the MLS is catching up. The MLS is really catching up. They're playing a good quality brand of soccer or football, if you will. But over in Europe, I mean, they've been playing for years and years, and they apparently Barcelona. I think they'd like take them when they're 10 or 11 years old and put them into the Barcelona Academy, and they have them sign like a contract. These kids, so the parents are over the moon, right? Hey, you know, we are set for life, and the kid can grow up through the Barcelona Academy and go on to play for the team.
So much like Canadian kids used to almost be born with a hockey stick in their hands.
But in this case, you wouldn't see the Toronto Maple Leafs sign an 8-year-old, though, whereas that's what they do out in Barcelona and
maybe
other.
they should.
Yeah.
Give them the playoffs.
Maybe you could, yes. No, but
See
Emma,
Shanahan pulling the trigger on that.
there you go.
Kyle Dubas is about not much older than that, actually.
Oh, you never know.
Which was a surprising pick, honestly, to get to it. To see a GM, especially in hockey, so young.
Yeah, a former Brock University sports management.
And all did it
graduate.
with analytics, right?
Yeah.
Started off with analytics.
Yay, analytics.
That's right.
Yay.
Analytics, putting the fun back in baseball.
Isn't that the truth? Guys, we're just about out of time on this edition of Sideline to Sideline. One last question. You were talking about soccer and comparatively the training. What about hooligans in Canada? We don't seem to have quite the caliber they do in places like England.
Well, no, I guess because our teams are spaced out a little more, and I don't mean that in a drug sense. I mean our cities are spaced out a little more. Whereas, hey, I lived in England, and you could just go a mile down the road or a few kilometers down the road, and you're at the opposing team stadium. So, and of course, you always have your drinks at 11 o'clock in the morning for the 3 o'clock in the afternoon kickoff. So you are completely zonked by the time you get to the game.
Good times.
And you know what alcohol will do? It gives you courage.
We're both looking at you, Ryan Fleming.
I got the Johnny Fever look, I know.
There you go.
So much fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the hooligans, I think, if there's any city in the world that's worthy of having hooligans, it's probably the city that we live in, the city of Welland. So maybe we need a football team, I think.
Hey, you never know. You never know.
Well said, Ryan.
There
Well
you
said.
go. There you go.
That'll do it. We better run. I think we should after that. We'll be back next week with another edition of Sideline to Sideline. Brian, thank you so much for guesting.
Oh, it was a blast, guys. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks. Do it again soon.
Absolutely.
That'll do it for this week's edition of Sideline to Sideline on Giant TV Niagara.